The evidence will show he invites a young woman, a secret lover, and the child that they have together to the park. But the evidence will show that the meeting that he's setting up for them is not at the park, but it is in a dense, brushy area near the Rio Grande River. The plan is to set up an ambush. What she doesn't know, he is hiding, waiting for her to get close enough to the truck to carry out his ambush. Her attacker comes out of the brush, clenching a knife, attacks this young woman.
And the verdict watch continues tonight. Jury's been out almost 6 hours now. And this is not about guilty, not guilty. He's already been convicted of murdering his mistress and their young child. Now Ronald Burgos-Aviles has to find out if the jury is going to send him to, like I was talking about, life in prison or over to death row. Let's go right to the courthouse now. Joining us, legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She's live in Texas tonight for an update on what's going on. What's the latest inside that courthouse tonight?
Well, hi there, Vinny. Yes, jurors are still deliberating. We are approaching 6 hours. So they have been talking about this case for quite some time. Not sure how long they will deliberate tonight and how long the judge will let them. If we can take a step back to when the guilty verdict came down on both these counts, 2 counts of capital murder in which he was found guilty of, the jurors were here till about 10 o'clock. It was a Thursday night. They were here till about 10 o'clock tonight, or that night, and then we got that guilty verdict back on those 2 counts. So tonight, we will see. We're an hour behind you here, Vinny, so we're on Central Time. So maybe they'll go till 10, maybe they'll go later, or we could get a verdict at any time.
Okay, I understand the jury did have a question, though.
Yes, they did have a question. So every time when we hear that everyone's kind of gathering inside the courtroom, we think, okay, maybe we have a verdict. But this was a question. The jurors were wanting clarification on special issue number 1. So there are 2 issues that jurors have to consider. Special issue number 1 is, did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant will commit continuing acts of violence in the society in which he is going to live, Vinny? So the society in which he's going to be living is prison. So did the state prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? The jurors had a question about this. They wanted some clarification as it related to count 2. This is him being found guilty of killing multiple people. The judge summoned the attorneys. He even brought them back into his chambers to discuss how he should approach this matter. Then they came back out, and Judge Lopez just simply told the jurors, just follow the instructions which I gave you. And so since then, they've been deliberating another few hours, Vinny.
And how about this jury? The prosecutor in this case, such a powerful closing argument, so much passion inside that courtroom. Any reactions from these jurors?
Vinny, I've been watching them throughout this whole trial, and in the beginning, in the guilt phase, I've reported on it before, some of the jurors were making the sign of the cross. And then as we now have entered into the penalty phase, when the defendants, one of the defendant's family members was on the stand talking about the upbringing of the defendant, another one of the jurors made the sign of the cross. We've seen a lot of tears. When District Attorney Alaniz was delivering his closing argument today, it was powerful, as you said, very passionate. And then at one point, he began pounding his fist right on the ledge, right outside where the jury box is. So right in front of the jurors, pounding his fist on that ledge, indicating the number of times that Grizelda was stabbed to death, and then baby Dominic. And the jurors were just glued to this. In a way, at first they were thinking, it seemed they were thinking, is he really going to do this 27 times? And he did. Let's look at that.
This was up close. This was personal. 27. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
And when he was doing that, Vinny, you could just feel it in the room, the power of that statement that he was making to the jurors. I also just want to point out that Mr. Boggs, defense counsel, he gave a very effective closing argument as well. He was really focusing on the law and what they have to prove. And it is kind of a high burden that they have in front of them. They are deciding whether to sentence, whether to recommend death. And did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant has the probability of committing future acts of violence? So it seems as if they're caught up on that right now. We'll have to see what kind of verdict they render.
Kelly Craft at the courthouse tonight. Obviously, if you hear anything, let us know. We'll go right to you live and get the latest in what's happening there. Thank you so much, Kelly. Almost 6 hours, the jury out, life or death. Let's bring back in our think tank, Al Wunsch, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brand. Never an easy decision for a jury. Jennifer, this is a guy who took the life of his mistress and their young child, the most vulnerable of any victim, a young child. And the nature, the motivation, the reason for all of it, to me is pretty grotesque that any man would do this. They already found that he did it. So it's just a question of figuring out what they're going to recommend here. What are your thoughts tonight?
Well, I mean, he was so brutal in what he did, and to kill his own child. I mean, he to question whether he has a propensity for violence or future violence, it seems pretty evident here based on what he's done in the past. This man has no feeling, no feeling for anyone, even his own very own child. And it appears that because his this woman, the mother of the child, asked for some child support, asked him to do the right thing to help raise this child who he brought into this world. It's terrible, brutal crime, and I can understand the jury. It's a very hard decision, as we know, so they are struggling with it, but certainly violent and brutal, and not showing any remorse, despite the fact that they say he's been a model prisoner and all of that. What he did is just unforgivable.
Al Wunsch, I would argue, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it would be a much safer place for him to be on death row as a member of, Border Patrol agent. So do the right thing here. Let's keep him safe behind bars on death row.
So it's a utilitarian argument with regards to putting him on death row.
Well, it's like taking the defense attorney and spinning it on him.
Well, that's an interesting argument.
Because the defense always argues what will punish him more, right? So I'm saying what will, as a prosecutor, what would make it easier for him? He'll be much safer on death row.
Well, as a former law enforcement, he's going to be in solitary anyway. So he's going to be in a segregated place. So that argument doesn't really work. They're not going to put him in Gen Pop because he's a former law enforcement. So he's going to be automatically in a segregated cell. He's going to have basically the same strictures that you have for someone who's on death row. He's going to have 1 hour of free activity, and the rest of the time he's going to be in a cell by himself. Either way, it's not a great situation. But the question, if you're going to be in solitary confinement, what are your chances of hurting anyone else? I mean, it's zero. So, I mean, the answer to that first question is, how is the state going to show that beyond a reasonable doubt? They're not. So, the jury's doing the right thing. They're deliberating 6 hours. That's great. I'm glad to see that they're actually taking their oath very seriously, and they're looking into this in the way it should be looked at. What kind of danger is he going to be proved to himself as he's sitting in a cell by himself? Nothing. There's no danger.
All right, Darnell, Al used all your time. Up next.
Oh, sorry.